actually, I sent him an email and the subject line was, "Where have you been all my life?"
I deleted it immediately. Because, you know, and then we did it.
Yeah, we became fast friends, and I love what he puts out, and I think we're both in it for the cause of really good, clear communication, and presentations are such a persuasive medium, and yet it's so abused, and so I'm real excited about his next book. Tell you a little bit about him. So Garr is currently the Associate Professor of Management at Kansai University. He teaches marketing and design. He has enormous influence with his blog. Presentation Zen is a bestseller. It outpaces mine by 200%.
I have connections with the mob, so, you know.
And his new book, I'm real excited about. It's going to be available in December. So this is kind of early for a book launch party, but I think the concepts are important and wanted him to come so you guys can order his book early, right?
Is that why we're here?
Yeah. Celebrate
I didn't know that.
So he's going to share some key insights from his new book, The Naked Presenter, and then we're going to open it up for questions afterwards, and hopefully you'll get all your questions answered. So thanks for coming, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nancy Duarte, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm not going to really, that's not true. I'm not going to give insights about the book, but we'll talk a little bit about, as it says here, talking about lessons from the bath. And my whole thing is I think we can learn a lot about design and communication by looking at non-traditional ways, not looking at like presentation books and all these things. Those are good too, but kind of looking in sort of unconventional places for wisdom. So we know that technology is a good thing, right? I think everyone here agrees with that. But it can lead to the dark side. And how many of you have seen a bad presentation with PowerPoint or Keynote? And everyone. Rick is raising his hand. You're partly responsible for this. But he's like, yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that later. So this is something that I did many years ago. It ended up actually in Nancy's first book. And I thought, you know, what if Darth Vader did a presentation? It would be very much in the PowerPoint style to try to convince Luke. If he had to use PowerPoint, it would look something like this. Contrast that with Yoda, who's my hero, then his presentation style would be very different, right? More naked, open, visuals are simple or empty with possibilities and lots of potential, right? So I love this whole Star Wars thing. So I thought, well, you know, there was life before PowerPoint, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. And you might remember this presentation. And it was a tough time, and people had to pay attention. This Death Star was a serious thing, and it's quite complicated. But the general there gave this presentation without any bullet points, right? I mean, it was a digital vector animation that explained how the inner workings of the Death Star, and people listened, they paid attention. But if we did that today, in modern times, of course, it would look something like this. Not very, and then it has a URL down here, which you can see. But if you want deeper information, you can go get that. And of course, and then and nothing really closes like a thank you slide, though, so to get the troops out there. Okay, so I show you this because this is ridiculous. But this would be ridiculous, but we do kind of similar ridiculous things as well. So as you know from the book, or sort of my whole philosophy on this, it's not a method, but just an approach. And there's restraint in preparation, simplicity in design, and then naturalness in delivery. You don't have to be perfect. We're not, you know, people that are going to be on TV. We don't practice like that. We have to kind of be ourselves. But everyone here, everyone is basically interesting, right? I mean, people are dating, right? I mean, people get married, and yet most presentations are not that great, right? But people can present. They present, they get married, you know, they're interesting to somebody. And part of the problem is, and it's not Microsoft's fault, we don't blame them, but part of the problem is sort of following the old sort of template style. So we want to try to have a more natural style, but using technology. I think using PowerPoint and other tools is a great thing. So this is the idea of naturalness, or shizen in Japanese. So that's one of the themes running through the book. And Daisetsu Suzuki, I'm a big fan of his work. He wrote, gosh, over 100 books, I think, on Zen. And as he says here, this is just a great quote, right? However civilized, however much brought up in an artificially contrived environment, we all seem to have an innate longing for primitive simplicity, right? Closer to the sort of natural state of living, of being. I think that's really true. And that's sort of the kind of the basis of what I'm talking about. And we can look at not Homo sapiens, but to other forms of life too. And they're really attracted, there's something natural and primitive about the bath. About that, whether it's a natural bath or the kind of bath in your house, about bathing and relaxing and soaking and taking it easy. And speaking of bath, this is my daughter. She's 4 months old now, but this is at 2 weeks. And she's taking a bath. And she loved it. She doesn't cry. She loves the warm water, and she really loves bath time now. So there's something about the bath that's always intrigued me. And people talk about being naked, too. Naked as the metaphor. Of course, Steve Jobs, at his Stanford speech many years ago, right? We're all kind of born naked, so it's kind of crazy not to follow our heart and follow our dreams. And then, of course, the great Nikki Giovanni, who some of you know, the poet, and she spoke for Obama's opening, what do they call that? Sorry, my English is not as good as it used to be. Well, you know, the opening thing that when you become president, and then people come in there. Inauguration! I was going to say wedding reception. I need some English classes. Anyway, as she says, you know, you basically go naked until you die, but people are afraid. So, you know, we're afraid to do that. But why not? I mean, life is it's ephemeral. We're here for a short time. Why not make a difference, right? And we can do that. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. That must be my agent. Anyway, so this is the idea. It's called Hadaka no Tsukiai. The kanji, the Chinese characters here are just naked, Hadaka, and then Tsukiai means a kind of relationship. But you can also think of it as communication, a naked communication. Naked, we're all the same. This is sort of the premise of the book. So I should inform you about the bath in Japan. How many of you have been to Japan? I know a few of you. How many of you have had a bath in Japan? Like an onsen or something like that? Yeah, so basically there are 3 types. I mean, the first type, ofuro, means really just any bath. So they're all ofuro, bath in a way. But this is the kind that you might have in your house. This something like this. So you have the shower in there, you have the bath. More modern houses look something more like this. This is a Panasonic bathroom. Panasonic makes great baths. But what you'll notice is the shower and the place where you sit, and then the deep bath, it's much deeper than in the States. It's all in one room. Outside is a changing area, they're separate. And then toilets and bathrooms don't go together at all. They're completely separate things. So that would be in a different part of the house. And that idea is, I never thought about that until I lived in Japan. Now I can't imagine it any other way. And then it's great too, because if you had a small house, someone's in the toilet, you can still use the bathroom. Right? So it's actually, it really makes sense. That's one of the things I don't know why the whole world does. I guess plumbers, it's easier to put them together. But I love the idea. Anyway, so that's what ofuro just basically means bath. So there's that type. But then there's the sento, and they still have sentos, but they used to be really popular because not everyone had a bath in their house. This is before World War II. Most people didn't have a bath in your house, but every neighborhood has these public baths, and they weren't usually mixed. Sometimes they were, they were not usually mixed. Sometimes we think that, well, Japanese always bathe, men and women bathe together. And then some of that happened, but basically they've been separate as well. So this is one from 100 years ago for the public bath. And then this is just some art from the depicting the Edo period, just showing how it works. So that it's separate. This was one for women and for children. And then this is an older one, but this would be the public bath. It's an older style. They have really nice ones now. So they're still popular, more like a spa, actually. But that's one from an older period. But it's the onsen that I think is the most relevant. Onsen means a hot spring, right? So those who went to Japan, you went to the hot spring, right? Usually they don't have to be outside, but you usually sit outside. It's natural spring water. It has to be a certain temperature. So they look something like this. The water is really hot. It has to be a minimum of 27 degrees Celsius, obviously. But they're usually much hotter than that, actually. This was a picture I just snapped. This was a hotel that we stayed in, and then you get your own private bath, which is outside. And then the place where you shower is off to the side. There's another picture of one I took. And then this is kind of really shows it. So you're outside, the water's really hot, you're in with nature. So this really brings the idea of nakedness and also naturalness and connecting and getting more in touch with your sort of natural roots. So I came up with 8 lessons that we could take from the bath. And I mean, this is just, again, it's just sort of a weird way of thinking about things. That you can learn lessons from the bento, which I've done before. I've done this in seminars with the bath, and people come up with their own. It's really a lot of fun. But there's 8 things. There's more than that, actually. But one thing is you first must prepare. And you have to prepare for a presentation, don't you? It's always in the preparation. Well, there are even instructions for how to take a bath. So you don't read Japanese, perhaps, but can you see what's going on here? What the instructions are, visually? right? So the circle is good, and then the box mark is, don't do that. So what do you think it is? Right, so you wash, you bathe, before you bathe, you bathe. You wash thoroughly before you go in. So it actually kind of says that there in English, right? Wash your body well before you get into the tub. Also, don't bring your towel into the tub. You can bring a small washcloth and then you kind of put that on your head. Here's another one where they made instructions for foreigners. So things with, you sit down when you take the shower. You sit on the little thing. You all sit there in a line. Don't run. Keep the towel out. Yes, you don't wear your swimwear or wash your clothes at the same time. Take off your underwear. And then, of course, wipe yourself off. And there's a lot of sort of empathy, too, thinking about the others. There's a certain manner, a certain etiquette. You don't speak in a loud voice. You don't have a beer. Hey, Fred, how's it going? Yeah, Kenji, yeah, rock and roll. You don't do that. Keep it cool. You can talk, but you keep it down and show respect. So this is there are many varieties. This is just one that shows the washing area. So that's probably the changing area, which is separate. So you're naked. You got to be comfortable with that. You're coming out naked. You might have a little washcloth that you can take, and then use that to cover yourself, and then you walk out. You don't have to do that. You can just, do full Monty. But the point is, you are naked. You have to be comfortable with the idea of being naked with strangers. And you come down here and then you thoroughly wash, and then you can get in. And it's really hot. Some people like to wash, get in, then get out again, and wash more thoroughly, shampoo and stuff, and then get in again. They sometimes have different temperatures. So you can go, they even have cold ones where you can get really cold and then get something really hot. So that's kind of the contrast thing, right? So that's number one. Number two is you must be, as I was alluding to, you must be fully naked, right? And probably for a lot of us, we're used to that idea when we're alone, right, in the bath. But the idea of doing that sort of in public might be uncomfortable for us. But that's what you do. This is an outside, so there you are. It could be like these two guys, maybe Howie and Rick, I don't know. That could be their names. They're there and they're just shooting the breeze, right? Not that there's anything wrong with that. So you just have to be comfortable with that. Number three is, you think about the metaphor, right? Presentation like bath. So when you do a good presentation, even with technology, you try to remove the barriers like, podiums and whatever else it is. Try to remove the mask and just be natural, even imperfect as we are. And that's kind of true with the Onsen too, with the bath, right? All of that's removed away. So things like status or, wealth, all that, we're all the same, naked, right? The fourth thing is we are totally and fully exposed. So a lot of them, you might walk out naked and it's quite cold and then you get into the ofuro outside. So it's really amazing to kind of be out naked in the natural state of being outside. And it's a different feeling if you're not used to it, but it's sort of invigorating and liberating in a way too. So that's kind of like presentation. You just have to be fully exposed, take a chance, take a risk. And the other thing is, when you get into ofuro, you really slow down your busy mind. And when it comes to presentation, in the preparation stage especially, but even when we present, we need to sort of slow down a little bit. And that's hard. That's hard for me as well, because I tend to, when I get excited, I speak fast. We like to try to calm down. And I've learned that from the ofuro. And this is an old Taoist philosophy or a way of thinking, right? That we cannot see our reflection in running water, right? So you really need, it's only when you have still water and things are calm that you can actually see yourself. And there's research actually into insight and how we get insights from the cognitive science, which shows that when you slow down your busy mind through meditation or just from getting away from things and sort of slowing down, that's where you get insight. So when you bump up against a problem, rather than keep working hard in that problem, it's sometimes good just to get away from it. And then what happens is voila, that's where that comes from. That's insight. And they were talking about this over 2,000 years ago, right? Same idea. We need to calm down our busy mind. The next one, number 6, is when you are naked in the ofuro with everyone, you're basically on the same level. Whether you're a monkey or you're a human, we're all the same. So in Japan, we have something called tate shakai, which is vertical society. So you have the big guys up here and the little guys like me. But when naked, we're all the same, right? So we're just naked with flesh and bones. That's all we are, and it leads to better communication. And that's why actually company folks. That's why I first learned about it was with my company 20 years ago. My boss said, "Hey, we're all going to an onsen." And they go, okay, wait a minute. So I'm American. This idea of going with all my colleagues and get naked in a tub, we don't do that where I'm from. So what company is this? Where am I working? But it's a very natural thing, and that's because then, let's say there's 25 in our office, we go away to an onsen, we get naked together, the sexes are separated obviously, and we have dinner and we drink, and it's just a good time for company folks to remove the walls and have more natural sort of communication. And we need that especially in Japan because we put more walls up. The culture's that way. There's more formality and things. Number 7 is the lessons in contrast. As you know, contrast is probably, well, it's one of the most fundamental design principles and storytelling principle as well. If you think of Star Wars, what contrast do you see in Star Wars, especially the trilogy, right? I mean, you have Han and Luke, right? So Han is a little bit older, that's a contrast, but Han is more sort of selfish. Luke is selfless. There's Yoda, the old wise master, and Luke, the innocent, sort of reckless. And then there's Leia. There's all these things. There's, of course, Darth, the dark side and the light side. And that's interesting. That's very compelling, even though the technology behind the trilogy was quite minimal, right? But why people loved it was the essence of story, the characters, and because they had great contrast. And you can apply contrast to physical design, to graphic design, but also to story. When you craft your stories, always look for the contrast, right? Sort of the give and take, the juxtapositions. These are very powerful things. So you can also see this in the onsen. So they're most popular in the winter actually, because the water is very, very hot, natural spring water with lots of sort of elements in it, juxtaposed with the cold snow outside, right? And that's a great contrast. There's some more examples of it. And it's really lovely to be in there. The water is very, very hot. So and yet you'll walk out there, you might walk 20 meters or something, or 10 meters at least, but it might be -3 and you're walking completely naked. And then you get in, and but it's lovely because you went from that contrast. Like, ooh, that was great, right? Now you don't want to get out, and you run back in. Okay, so that's one. And then the final one, wait, I think, what did I say, 8 or 9? I can't answer, we'll edit this out. This isn't streamed, right? Oh, bloody hell. All right, anyway, there's 8 or 9. 8, is that what I said? You can't trust me. Okay, I think there's 8. So the other thing is, no, there are 9. Did I say 8? Yeah. Don't do what I do. I should have gone to rehearsal. Okay, so there are 9 actually. This is number 8. You have to watch the time, right? So you don't want to ever go over time. I thought today this will be about 30 minutes. It might be a little bit less. The water is very, very hot. And you can stay in there a while, but you don't want to stay in there too long because that's not good for you, right? But it's good to stay a little bit. So presentations are like that too, right? You have to know when to stop and never go over time. And then the final one is, if you've ever done a presentation, well, you've all done a presentation. When it goes well, you feel great, right? It's a great feeling, not because, yay, look at me, I did it. Sometimes you're just happy that it's over, I guess. So maybe that's part of it. But also you're happy because you did it and you made a connection and maybe you helped people, or it was something difficult and you got through it and you made a difference. And it's also like that with an onsen. So this is what you do after, then you put on the yukata and you have beer and Japanese food with your friends and you feel good about having done the onsen or having done a presentation. Right? So those are the 8 or 9 lessons. I think there are more. Are there any others? What other lessons could you get from the bath? I'm sure there are more, that we can really stretch this metaphor out until you'll never come back. All right. So I came up with, in the naked presentation book, there are 10 P's. There are actually a lot more P's than that. The P's of delivery. And I hear just 6 here. For example, things like presence or pace or passion. Proximity, that is how close you are to the audience or compared to the computer and so on. Play is actually a really big one, especially when it comes to innovation and coming up with new ideas. It doesn't mean goofing around. Our teachers as kids would say, stop playing around. That probably wasn't the right word because play is a good thing. They meant, stop screwing around. Don't, stop not paying attention, stop wasting time or something like that, because play is a beautiful thing. It should be respected. It's the wonderful word it is. This play is great. And then in participation, there are many others, but I thought just for the last few minutes I'd focus on just a few. So proximity, what I mean by that is, I don't know, Keizo is my friend Keizo. Where are you? Keizo, you here? Keizo is from Japan also. Oh, he's American, but he lives in Japan, as I do. He just happens to be visiting. And this is at one of our events, but I fogged out to protect the innocent. And this is very common. And afterwards, everyone said, well, this is a great presentation. But it was a very normal presentation, but it wasn't a great presentation. It was a complete waste of time from the point of view, but very normal. Very normal. But we had a lovely lunch with friends. You know, we were all business people. This was a very technical presentation, lots and lots and lots of information. But information does not equal story. Information does not equal meaning. And we didn't get much meaning out of it. And as you can see, part of the problem is, besides the slides, okay, but the other problem is he's not even close to where we're looking. Everyone's looking at the screen, and he's over in the corner, and it's very normal, behind a box. So we don't want to do that. And if you look, of course, as the big guys do, they have something called confidence monitors down here. Right? And I have a confidence monitor over here. I'm so happy to have this. I said you should have that when I presented here last time. Otherwise, I'd have to be over here. So I can see what you see, so I never have to look behind. Right? So it's a great thing. And he has them, as you can see, down here. But you can do it yourself in a way. So these are snaps I took just from when I'm out in the road. This is the Ritz-Carlton in Midtown Tokyo. And as you see, what the audience doesn't even see. In fact, someone said, how did you memorize all that material? And I didn't memorize it. I mean, I knew it, but I could still see it. Can you see it right there? Right? But the audience was not aware of that. So that's part of being naked, is try to take those things away. They don't know what software I'm using. They don't know what computer I'm using. Or, you know, they're not really aware of that. They can see slides, but they're not really thinking about it. This is another one. This is my wife actually giving a presentation, sitting down, so it's very formal. There's the computer behind the projector. Projectors now are really, really high quality. They can be small, but they're very bright, so they're actually low enough you can put it in front of your computer and still see the computer. Here's another one. This is a student of mine. This is at my university. This is a student from Finland, and it was his idea to put the computer out there because he read presentations then. Yeah. And he tried to be naked, so he does it that way. Most students kind of stay behind the podium, kind of hide behind there because there's, there's an escape door if you have to leave. Another student from Kenya who just gets right out there, front and center, walks around the room, and it was good. This is our TEDx event. This is my friend Patrick, but we put the monitor there. It actually should be a bit lower, but anyway, it's right there. So people have it, but we're not really aware that they're looking at it. So that's something you can do as well. Somehow try to get that computer away from you, unless you have to use something like, what's the one by Hans Rosling? Mind Gap? No, what's it called? Gapminder. Sorry, dyslexic. Gapminder, and then that way, you want to mouse with that a little bit, and that's fine. But just don't let that interfere or get in the way of your audience. And of course, passion, which I always talk about. It's important to show your passion. And I'm a big fan of Steve Irwin, the late great Steve Irwin, who was nuts. I mean, he would see a crocodile and jump on it. Cranky! I don't usually think of that. But as he says, right, being excited and having passion and enthusiasm, that goes a long way in education. It's not everything, but it's a very important thing to have in a teacher, but also in a presenter. And I've shown this many, many times before, but if you haven't seen this, I want to make a point with my friend, all of our friend, Steve Ballmer. So I know you've seen this before. But there's a point. This man has passion. CEO of Microsoft. Yeah? That's passion. That is passion. In fact, to prove it, that's the passion zone right there. You can't fake that. But I use this as a metaphor. I don't mean that you should sweat like that. That's not the point. Or you should shout like that. But he's sincere. This is who he is. And so for that, I give him a lot of credit. So think of it more as a metaphor. To be yourself and to don't be afraid to show your passion. That's going naked, right? He's not afraid. Maybe people will think you're foolish, or they may think he's foolish for letting it out. But I say I'd rather see that than to be bored by someone sort of keeping it in too much. So the point that, of course, that we always make is not about slides. You don't have to use slides. You could turn this off completely if you wanted to. I just happen to be using slides. Usually I use a whiteboard. When I teach, I don't use slides hardly at all. So I use a whiteboard and use the computer to show videos and other things. So it's not the slides, of course, it's you and it's your content. But you have to really believe this. If you're going to use software, you have to believe that you can do it in a naked way. And of course, the old thing about Yoda. I love Yoda. There's a lot of great advice you can get from Yoda. So he had something good to say about unlearning what you have learned. Do you remember that quick? Here's a little clip of it. Very disappointing.
Master, moving stones around is one thing. This is totally different.
No different. Only different in your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Yes, I love that. You must unlearn what you have learned. But that is really true, right? We come always to the table with preconceived notions about how things should be done. And the reason I use this cup here, which is overflowing, this is sort of a thing from actually Chinese wisdom, Taoist wisdom, and Zen wisdom, is that when you approach something new, you must come with an empty cup, right? You can't learn anything new. You can't take it in. So Bruce Lee has a famous quote where he says, your cup, the usefulness of the cup is its emptiness, right? So you must come to the dojo with your cup empty so that you can receive not just new knowledge, but just to be open to new things, right? Or to unlearn what you have learned. But you say, I don't believe it, right? No, I don't believe this guy. As Yoda would say, that is why you fail. First, you must believe it. And of course, some of the things I talk about in the book and that Nancy talks about in the book, because it's easy to do just the sort of standard way, the title and the bullet points. It takes time to do it a different way, but you have to find the time. Somehow. Because it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about the audience, right? All right. And you can get better. We call it Kaizen or personal Kaizen in Japanese. It just means you don't have to get better in a big, big leap. It can be a little bit at a time. Learn a little bit about design, a little bit about delivery. You yourself just get a little bit better. That's all you have to do, step by step. So good luck. That's my presentation. This means end, and that's my contact information. All right. Thank you very much. How long was that? Was that 30 minutes? Yeah. Right? 32? 2 minutes over. Apologize. All right, what do you want to do now? Is there more beer? Oh. Oh, are those the questions? So if you ask a question, you might get something.
That's a good idea. We have books, and we also have this brand new bento box that isn't even out yet. Peach Pit, Sarah's here, and she brought this new bento box, which is basically Presentation Zen on DVD. It has
Storyboard book, pencils, sticky notes. That's a cool box.
Just explain what it is, 'cause I think
Is this one the one that's already open?
This is the one that they're both already open.
Oh.
I don't know how to
Sarah must have opened it. This is Sarah, the publisher over here.
Walk through like what this
So
is.
this is it. You can put it on your shelf. It has the name here. It has the name here, but you can hardly see it. That's very subtle. See, we're going for the subtle look. It also has a wrapper. I don't know what you call this, which it explains.
It's called a belly band.
Belly band. I like wrapper better. Okay, so it opens up like this. And this follows the Go Ishiki, which means the 5 colors of a bento, of a real bento. And the 5 colors are black, white, red, green, yellow. And that way, when it comes to food, it's aesthetically pleasing and brings you in, but also that's nutritious, because if you get those colors covered, probably it has good health benefits as well. So this is the DVD, which is in here. This is a card from iStock Photo for 20 free high-res photos. So actually, if you bought those separately, it's $350 or something like that. So that actually, I was surprised. That is a really good deal, just right there. Sticky notes, and then if you would remove that layer, then there is a storyboard book, which pops out. It's also just a good box on its own, all right? All right. Luke, I am your father. Sorry. And then this is so it's got blank. This is very Zen. Oh, it's right upside? No, blank. There's some little quotes in there
From Presentation Zen.
from the first book, but there's also storyboard bits of it too.
Use sticky notes.
Use the sticky notes. And you can buy more sticky notes from 3M Company. And it's a binder, so you can have it like that. And it's pretty cool.
We'll give the bento box away to the first question.
The first question. I'm not picking. Okay. Because then someone will follow me out to my car, who I didn't know. I know this country. It's dangerous.
It has to be a really good question, because I could veto anything.
Oh. Was it Don? Don gets the box?
Well, if he asks a
Okay, you judge that. Hurry up, because there's still beer available.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've run into at different companies is that people tend to use presentations in a certain way, right? They try to put everything in the slides, and then they try to convey all the information in the slides. And so, as I try to make that distinction between this is a presentation we deliver versus a document to transfer information.
Right.
That's that struggle that I run into over and over again, where people can actually get angry at you, where you try and, if if you're working on a presentation for more than just yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then you try to move to more of this style, and then they say, no, it has to have this information in it, because almost they want the thing to stand on its own.
Right.
But these kind of presentations don't stand on their own
Right.
at all.
Well, like this, yeah, it's a great, I feel your pain. I hear it a lot. I mean, the question, I guess it wasn't a question.
You didn't ask a question.
Yeah, well,
I did, and the question is, how do you deal with this?
yeah. Well, the question, we all, you heard, did you hear it? Everyone? And how many people have a similar kind of experience, right? I mean, really everyone. This is the way of the world. Change is slow. And by the way, presentation Zen or slideology doesn't mean, in my case, I'm not saying do it this way. This is how I do it. You will find your own way to do it. But what we know doesn't work is this thing with bullet points all in it, right? Because that's not a good document. As a standalone, it's very vague. It doesn't go deep enough. And then as a visual, well, it's not visual at all. And there's more and more evidence, from the cognitive sciences about this. And all I know, it's anecdotal, but I get a lot of surgeons and doctors and scientists, who come to the seminars, who come to my seminars, and they want to do something different. Everyone knows, but habit, and everyone's talked about this throughout time, the scourge of habit, right, and conventional wisdom. It's very, very difficult to change it. So all I can say is just, keep hanging in there and fighting the fight and being an example, so that when you present and someone says, well, because if they just see your slides, because I have professors at my university who will grade students down because there was nothing on their slide. They go, well, how was their content? Oh, yeah, they know their stuff. Well, that's what matters, right? Anyone can just copy stuff from the internet and put it in a slide. You have to really know your stuff. So the thing we always talk about is the difference between a document and a visual, right? So I don't have any magic cure for you. Maybe Nancy has something. All I can say is hang in there, and don't, as Guy would say, don't let the bozos grind you down, right? It's just conventional wisdom. They're smart people and they're well-meaning, but it's habit and it's the way things are done. And sometimes it might even be appropriate in some cases, right? Where it's just I just need a few bullets about something. To tell you the truth, in years I haven't seen where that was a better way of doing it. Where I go into companies and this is the conventional wisdom, the conventional way that it's done. And it was never the best way to do it. It wasn't effective, and everyone knew it. It was like the elephant in the room, right? But it's usually the person with power who's happy with the way it's done. Yeah, and there are Yodas out there, right? So we point at lots of examples, and we say Steve Jobs, but then you could say, well, but that's different. But there's not just him. You go look at a lot of TED Talks, right? And there's lots of people. There's Pechakucha, different way of doing things with the constraints. There's Ignite, that's a different way of doing things. You don't have to do it this way. There's myriad ways of doing it. But following the sort of title, lots of bullet points, I don't know where that's effective, right?
So first hand up in the back.
Thank you.
Back right corner. Any questions back there? It's a book.
They were
Okay.
drinking early.
So, when did you first actually start getting into doing presentations? Was it when you were in Japan at Sumitomo, or when you came back to
Yeah.
Apple? Or?
Actually, I talk about this in the second book, Presentations and Design. It was high school when I was 17, and I was using 35mm film slides. And then we didn't have PowerPoint, so it was a semester-long presentation, or to work on this presentation using slides. But first crafting a story, first doing research. It was about the environment and pollution and this kind of stuff. I'm from Oregon, so I have a lot of tree karma, and that's the presentation that I did. And it was completely like the things we do today. 2 carousels, right? So I had beautiful transitions. It was nothing but visual. And sometimes we would write stuff on a chalkboard, take a picture of that, and then send that off. And then 2 weeks later, we get it back, and that became some of the text that we'd use, or a bar chart or something. Because this was like oh my God, I'm old. Anyway. I think Kennedy was president. Anyway, it was before PowerPoint. Certainly, it was before the Mac even. We had an Apple, but we didn't have a Mac. And that was great. That was the way it was done. So, and if you go way, way back, even before that, people had been doing even technical presentations without bullet points. That was sort of a new thing, with the software. Think about your college classes as an undergrad. Some of you are my age or so. And my undergrad was in philosophy, and there was no PowerPoint for that. and the professor would write on the board. But how much can you write in an hour and a half? He didn't like say, "I'll be with you in a minute," and just, it wasn't that. As ideas came, as he had a plan, and he would write a few key words or key things, and we listened and we discussed. And of course, we read the book. There might be a handout to take away. He might have brought a handout. All these things, but he didn't come prepared with a bunch of bullets for us to read. That's conventional wisdom now, but it doesn't have to be that way. Thank you for your question. Did he get a book? Oh, I'll let you. Thank you. Right here in the front.
Yeah, first of all, I'm very inspired by both of your work. My presentations have changed because of this. But it takes days to create these presentations. I wonder if you can share, like, for this particular presentation, what is the story behind it? How did you get that idea? What happened? I'm sure that the process behind it, because it looks like it's so seamless, everything is thought through. But I know it could have taken hours and hours to, you can share that.
This actual presentation? This one, we don't do what I do. I put this together, but it took me a few hours. I did it on a napkin. I haven't had time. I was in Cleveland. I came here. I was at Stanford in the morning. I had a few hours in between the Stanford seminar, so I stayed there in a classroom. But I did it on a napkin on the plane over first, and so I knew what to do. The visuals are all mine, or a DVD of stock images from Japan, so they're unique. They're not from ice. Some are from iStock. So I had the idea of it, but it's very sort of simple, right? You saw it's the bath is the metaphor, and then what can you learn from the bath? And then I shared a little bit of the book, and that's it. It's very, very simple. And that was 30 minutes. That easily could have been 45, really, or an hour. I usually have where I have, you would come up with things, and then I asked, there wasn't much discussion here. So the key is to, and we say it all the time, but close the computer, get a napkin, at Starbucks or whatever, and now you can think clearly. You can get that when you stop your busy mind and calm down, you can it kind of comes to you, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that, and that's it. That's your presentation. Now you can develop it, and then eventually you'll go to PowerPoint or whatever you use. Or you decide in that process, I'm not going to use slides. Slides are not the best thing for that. And then you say, well, okay, I'm going to use a whiteboard, or I'm just going to talk. Right? So when I worked at Apple, Steve does these famous keynotes, right? But his presentations every quarter for the employees, he didn't do that. In fact, he did it just like this. He pulled up and sat just like I'm doing now, and he had a few things, and he had it written not on his hand like certain politicians, but he had he did have note cards because he just had a few things, and he said those things, and then it was questions. I thought that was great. Everyone thought, oh, he's gonna no, that wouldn't be appropriate for his employees, right? It should be more naked, and that was very naked, especially since he was in shorts and flip flops, very CEO-ish. Thank you.
I'm interested whether, apart from PowerPoint, and whether this is in PowerPoint or whether you use any other software packages that you prefer better on either platform, both the PC and the Macintosh version.
I mean, if I want to be like a politician, I would give you a political answer. Yeah?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. The question is, I'll repeat it. Well, because the microphone's going for the streaming. Sorry, thanks, Mike. So what software do I prefer? See, I really say it doesn't matter. And I mean, of course, I tend to go with one more than the other, but it's just sort of a habit or a preference. Because I don't want, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I spend my whole life saying it's not about the tools. PowerPoint is great if you ignore most of its features, right? Well, I mean, it just has too much. Keynote too, you don't need this. I didn't hardly use anything. This is so low tech.
This was on PowerPoint?
What do you think? It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm sure Rick and Howie could tell, but although I don't know if you can tell as much anymore, and there was a time.
Well, I mean, what's interesting is PowerPoint is on either platform. The Keynote is Mac.
Yeah, PowerPoint's great on the Mac, and it's great on the PC.
So whether
Keynote's only on the Mac, right?
They're both frustrating, and it's opened up something because I used to do the dual project.
So the question is, or his comment is, the PowerPoint and Keynote are frustrating?
Well, in so much as the animations, I've begun to build slides that become sequential, almost like movies. And so you want them to do more. I, in fact, went to Redmond and actually asked the PowerPoint team, couldn't you make it real time? Because their timings are off. They are very chip oriented. Like my big powerful computer is slower than my.
Okay. Well, I have someone from Microsoft you can talk to here. Right. No, come back.
Is there another question?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, which was the
I think it's keynote.
Yes, okay.
Because I'm on a, yeah. But it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I want to stick with that answer, it does not matter. I really think it doesn't.
So my question is, I would like to know your recommendation for when you have very technical presentations, because I attended a few weeks ago. I attended HTML5 and CSS meetup where the presentation was like pure coding, and I wasn't there to judge the presentation. I was there because I wanted to learn CSS3, but as a presentation designer, I ended up like. I couldn't help it. I criticized the slides. It was really confusing. A lot of people left before the end.
Okay.
And my question would actually be, how could you present naked in a case like that where it's so technical, and would actually slides be recommended?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And as you said, you weren't there yourself, but people left, so apparently it didn't connect. That's something that you have to decide. If you look at Nancy's book, and I do the same thing, is you have content. Most people think, for example, I have to give a quarterly report, and so data, and data is important. But more important, or just as important, is the first thing. What do you call it? You go from A to B, or maybe that's someone else. But you move from to move to. So okay, here's this audience. I'm presenting data, or I got to give them something. I want to teach them something. They're going to be here for an hour to listen to me. Where are they now? So I have to know my audience. I have to kind of know where they are now. And where do I want them to be, right? And you have to know that. And once you close the computer and write that on a sticky note and have that clear in your mind, then you'll have the appropriate code or data that's appropriate to make them go from that place, from that not knowing to knowing. But my guess is this person didn't do that, and he kind of put some stuff together, and it tends to get more and more and more. It's like a cluttered house. Any of you have a house full of too much stuff? Right? I don't know if you have that, but if you really thought about it, if we said, okay, now design your house, design it now, and design what you want to put in it, you probably wouldn't have all that stuff in it, right? But when you just kind of slap the presentation together, you sort of just start, because you know a lot. This guy was very smart, I'm sure, and knew a lot of stuff. And you go, well, I better put that in there just in case. Better put that in there just in case, right? Just in case leads to a lot of clutter, right? I better have an extra sofa just in case. Another sofa, an extra car, an extra motorcycle.
We have time for one more question. You have to pick.
I can't see. You made me.
She was all excited.
She was the most excited.
She was the most naked, so she gets to
Another big question. So, Garr, one of your keys was participation. And I'm wondering if you could share with us some of the ways that you think about structuring your presentation to elicit that, to draw that in.
Yeah. So the question was, what about one of the P's was participation. So I think good presentation, somehow you get people to participate. Even if you look at a big keynote, like a Steve Jobs keynote, kind of a quintessential keynote where there's lots of people, and he doesn't ask for questions, he doesn't have people do little, role plays or whatever, but in a way it's conversational language. People are participating, because he'll say, isn't it great? Isn't it cool? Whatever. I'm not saying be like Steve Jobs, but it's very conversational, and when it's conversational, you feel a part of it. But what I do, because I do seminars, but I do a lot of keynotes too, so even when I do a keynote, I'll have people do something physically, because when you're doing, then you're learning, right? Experience is how you learn. And of course, there's the 9-minute rule, which like Dr. Medina's book, Brain Rules, talks about that. People can't really stay engaged more than about 9 minutes. So you do something else, but not irrelevant. It has to be relevant to what you're talking about. But I might tell a story. I might do a little activity. I might ask for questions. I might show a video clip that is relevant. But you mix it up and you do lots of different things. And that's how I teach. I think good teaching, and this is rare in Japan, is for the teacher to talk less. Yoda didn't talk very much in Star Wars 4 and 5, right? And yet we remember him perhaps more than anyone, because what he said had a lot of power, and instead he got the student, Luke, to bring it out. It was already within him. Does that help? Well, it's something we can talk more about. Thank you for participating, and things like this. Questions like this. That's it, but I'll stay around so we can drink and answer more questions offline.